Hey, what up, everybody? It's your boy Carson Fox. Carson Fox on West Virginia Mountaineers Sports after the West Virginia Mountaineers defeated the Duquesne Dukes 56-17 last night. And where I want to start with this game, and I want to get feedback from you. I want to hear from you. So leave your comments here either on this page or on Twitter is how are you feeling, Mountaineer Nation, after that game? Because I think this can be a very polarizing take because this is college football to a T. I see it seems like it is. Weird weeks like this where some teams are playing competitive opponents and some in which this case you're not. West Virginia playing an FCS school and having total success against FCS opponents, being undefeated. I believe in program history. I think this now makes 24-0 for the Mountaineers against FCS opponents. So not an Appalachian State, Michigan type of upset, or remember a few years ago, Appalachian State almost upset Penn State at Happy Valley, or nothing like that. Or last week, now Appalachian State being a Power 5 or G5 FBS program, but you get what I'm saying. It's just a West Virginia Duquesne matchup, as we talked about in the preview show. After Duquesne played a Division II team the week before, that they were going to play hard, and they did at times, and I'll get into that, but it was still such a talent disparity at the end of the day that this game, when you look at it on paper, final score 56-17, from an offensive perspective, blew away what I had called for in the preview and preseason prediction. Scoring 56 points could have very well been, had it not been for 1 yard difference and Rodney Gallagher extending the ball out to the pylon, losing it out of his hands and fumbling it out of the end zone for an opposing team touchback. Could have been 63-17, so even more decisive than it was. But I have a feeling that you're feeling a little bit like me, that although they covered, so woohoo, the Mountaineers beat Vegas. Yes, they scored 56 points, another home victory, that you're still kind of like, as in the thumbnail of my video here, at the end of the day. So, let's get into it. And we got to start out at the very beginning, the very first quarter, the very first defensive series. West Virginia gets Duquesne off the field in 3 plays, looked stout, looked great, looked exactly like you wanted them to. And Jacoby Spells on punt return just can't get out of his own way, touches the ball. I don't know if there was a miscommunication between Preston Fox and the punt return team, but usually there's a code word. I think when I was playing football growing up, it was Peter or something like that. Someone comes up with some sort of a word. It's Peter, and he's making hand signs. So the ball's in front, and some people start to clear away. But what do you know? Jacoby Spells is in the absolute worst place at the absolute worst time, touches the ball. Duquesne picks up possession. Bam, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, and scores to go up 7-0. And you're like, here we go, as Mountaineer fans. What in the world is going on? Couldn't have been really a worse start in that regard. And that's kind of where, I hate to say it, but I want to start out with this is Andrew Wilson-Lamp is scaring me, everybody. I mean, that touchdown he gave up in the first quarter, and then he gave up another completion later on in the game. And I think like the announcers broke it down in slow-mo that he was playing off the ball. He drops back about 10 yards, giving the wide receiver all the time in the world. It just had me having flashbacks of Pat Miller from 2012. And if any of you have PTSD whenever I say that name, Pat Miller, I'm starting to feel that way in regards to seeing 7 out on the field. And it just really, really hurts. Because I know this cornerback position, talked about it on Thursday night's preview show, has just gotten thinner by the wayside. Jacoby Spells not playing a week ago. We have yet to see Montre Miller with an undisclosed injury that Neil Brown talked about on his pregame show Thursday night, that he was going to miss this game and might be out for extended time. So holy crap, it's 2022 all over again, that West Virginia is only at week 2 and you're already thin at cornerback. Haven't seen Marcus Floyd yet this season, who was supposed to be your starting cat safety. And if you recall me almost 9 months ago after the no Oklahoma State contest in Stillwater, and the way that's Floyd finished off that 2022 season. I was really high on him. I was even higher on Floyd than I was on Aubrey Burks at the time. But given the way that his postseason accolades and Pro Football Focus giving him a great grade for the 2022 season, you seemed like, okay, wow, we have a really good player in Burks and Floyd on opposite sides. Okay, but yet we haven't seen him. So this secondary really worries me. So again, after West Virginia gives up the 7 points, another player who really, really struggled in this contest opposite Andrew Wilson-Lamp that really scared me was Cortez Bram. I think he had two drops, one a really easy third down out route that hit him right in the hands, bounced off his hands, and that ended the drive. So, going into the West Virginia eventually comes back and scores. Jalen Anderson. I don't really need to talk in too much of what happened before the thunderstorm. That's what changed the game. Is God smiled on the Mountaineers in this moment and said, all right, let me save you here right now. I don't know if West Virginia was just playing like super tight and, had some pressure, or like this is what like I can't understand about. And that's, I guess, the beauty of college football is not knowing what to expect week in and week out when you're talking about 18 to 23-year-olds, or, with the COVID years, it seems like, 17 to 24-year-olds, Gen Z. Nobody, not even Gen Z people themselves, can figure themselves out. So when this game, I don't know if West Virginia's players were just tight, or Neil Brown and the coaches were tight, or what was the problem, but they go into the locker room for this 2-hour-long break that just seemed to take forever. And in hindsight, scheduling this game at a 6 o'clock kickoff really, really wasn't that great. I mean, because it turned into what you would think is like a 3-hour game most times, 3.5, and it turned into a solid 5. And Mountaineer fans, as you saw, left in droves after the thunderstorm. And I don't know how many, was there even 5,000 people still in the stands, after the thunderstorm, the way that West Virginia performed. So I don't know if that the players just needed the fans to just get the heck out of there, create this almost spring game like atmosphere or scrimmage where it's them and Duquesne, pressure's off. No, the lights are on, but there's no fans to really be critical or to judge you. I have no idea. I don't know how that West Virginia went into that locker, or I would love to know what Neil Brown said word for word. What was the locker room like? Who were the standout leaders? Because if I was the coaches, I would just be chewing them out to a T. And I think that's where the majority of Mountaineer fans are coming from. And I think we're ingrained to this because of Bob Huggins. Bob Huggins absolutely never settled for imperfection to a T. And I think you can feel this from the glory era, or even going back as far as the 5 years ago with Will Greer and David Sills, is that West Virginia fans expect better all the time. You only play for, as I said, about 3.5 hours for 12 Saturdays and then Thursdays over the course of 3 months out of the year. So when that game is going on, you're giving all of your energy, all of your attention, all of everything in your being is going out toward those moments out onto the field and make something out of yourself. So for West Virginia to struggle in that Duquesne game before in the first quarter and a half, and I think that's what just put a sour taste in everybody's mouth of just wanting to get out of there and go home at that point in time. It's already, they didn't start back up until just after 9 o'clock. So it's sad that there are so many Mountaineer fans probably got there, as early as noonish or maybe even earlier, spent all day in the parking lot, went into that contest, watched that, abomination for the first hour ish before everything went dark, thunder rolled in, and then they drove home and they missed the like best part of the game. And it just happened right after the break. So I don't know. This is one for the memory banks. It really is, of just how that first half played out. But what saved West Virginia, it happened in the second quarter, was redshirt freshman wide receiver Hudson Clement. And what can you say about the kid coming out there, finishing the day with, let me get these numbers exactly, 5 catches, 177 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Some of the West Virginia media members out there, Chris Anderson from 2-4 Sports and Keenan Cummings from Rivals, tweeted into, I think it was the third quarter, that Hudson Clement joined just Stedman Bailey, who did it twice, and Tavon Austin as the 3 Mountaineers who completed a game with 175 receiving yards and 3 or more touchdowns. That's insane company. I mean, that's best in school history company right there. So this will be forever remembered as the Hudson Clement game. And I got to give it to him. I think if given the way that Cortez Bram performed in this contest, and also, unfortunately, Jeremiah Aaron, who had a couple of drops as well, I think including a potential touchdown. I wasn't really I haven't been impressed, or I know he's been dealing with some injuries, but where has been Jashawn Polk? Between Bram, between Devin Carter, and between Polk, these are all guys who only have a bowl game excluded, 10 more games left in their college careers. Their eligibility is being used this year. And, Carter and Polk are guys that, at least in Carter's case, I'm sure Country Roads Trust in West Virginia spent the boatload of their NIL dollars on he and Beanie Bishop. So you didn't see Carter in this contest. This team is just starving right now for a second wide receiver. For Cole Taylor, once again, 3 catches, 55 yards, putting up a solid performance like he did a week ago against Penn State. At his size, at 6'7", 260, he is making for a mismatch that you just love to have, that West Virginia hasn't had that as a part of their element of their offense since Neil Brown's become the head coach. But I mean, other than that 1 year with Trevon Wesco in 2018, and even then he was still predominantly used as a blocker, and that's where I think he made his money, but being able to catch some balls too. West Virginia has not utilized the tight end much in its offense. I mean, I think I go back to almost Tyler Urban in the late 2000s, early 2010s. So it's awesome to see Cole Taylor getting utilized early and often so far this season. But still, if you count him as your second receiving threat outside of Carter, where are I'd say especially inside receivers? Preston Fox did have 2 catches, 34 yards and a touchdown, namely the 22-yard touchdown. So it was nice to see after he was called upon in a big spot a week ago against Penn State on that third down play that I said was the deciding moment of the game for the Mountaineers. He bounces back and catches a touchdown. But so I got to really give a lot of credit to Clement, to coming out there and having no fear and catching the ball. That is ultimately the wide receiver position. I don't care how fast you are. I don't care how great a separation you get. I don't care how domineering you are from a physical standpoint. If you cannot, as a wide receiver, catch the football, you're worthless. So that is why Neil Brown, well, I'll give it to him, are in blocking. So blocking is very important. So, and it's something that goes underrated for guys who can wide receiver block. And given how important the running game is for this team this year, I think it is very important for wide receivers on this team to be able to block well. But when you're called upon to make catches, the ball is thrown your way, because there are other receiving targets out there that Garrett Green could throw the ball. But especially when you're open and you're the primary read on a play and you don't come up with the catch, it's devastating. And that's what demoralized the offense there early on in this game. But Clement came to play. I love the couple of broken plays. I think it was a bubble screen fake out to Gallagher that 3 of the defensive backs for Duquesne bid on the play. Clement just goes on a streak down the sidelines. Duquesne completely loses him, and Green just hits him for an easy 6. So for that, I thought Garrett Green on the day, although he did start the game, I said in the preview I would have loved to see Nico Marchiol play the entire first quarter. and then Green come in the second and get the second and third quarters. But I thought this game he was a little more patient than he was. And I know it's probably the opponent, it's probably at home, but it was nice to see him being a little more patient within the pocket and not look for the first primary read and then try and run. He did do, some of that, and that is his greatest quality are his two legs. And to get outside the pocket and pick up first downs, you'll take that any given day of the week. But for him to stay more confidently in the pocket, deliver strikes, even though he had a couple of errant passes, some overthrows, and of course the drops that brought down his completion percentage, I'll take 10 for 18, 240 yards and 4 touchdowns, including a couple of bombs on the day. So kudos to Garrett Green. I thought he played well when he got the opportunities. And then Nico Marchiol coming in later on in the contest. I got to give credit to Neil Brown for being as aggressive as you really like to see him. So far, I'm liking at the times when he's being aggressive. There was a point in time in this contest, I think it was 21 or West Virginia was going into the half, and I think they were just around near midfield. And Neil Brown, it was one of those, like, as an aggressive fan, you have the momentum, you're putting some scoring drives together, and West Virginia gets into a fourth down situation. Yeah, it was. I want to get it exactly here for you all. Okay, yeah, it was 4th and 2. West Virginia started the drive with 2 minutes and 50 seconds in the second quarter. And it, at this point in time, was 28-10 going into the half. You would have liked West Virginia to score here and make it a 35-10 game, so you have some breathing room. Even if some more crap hits the fan in the second half, you can play loose. You can get Nico Marchiol into the game and scheme it however you want. So on a 4th and 2 at West Virginia's own 45-yard line, they hand the ball off to C.J. Donaldson, and he picks up the easy 3 for the first down. And then, of course, Garrett Green goes on, hits Preston Fox with that 22-yard touchdown. Those are the moments you like to see in these kind of FCS games, is when it becomes time for these situations that if they can then translate into bigger contests, Pitt, Texas Tech, TCU coming up, that's what you like to see. And also, I got to give a lot of credit to this rush defense. I talked about it on the pregame video that last week against Edinburgh, Duquesne ran the ball 40 times. And I think this had to do with the way the game flowed. Duquesne only ran the ball 28 times on the day for a net gain of 3 yards. 3 positive rushing yards. Taj Butts, I didn't know this, didn't do the research on it in the pre-show, was a transfer from Missouri. So he comes to Duquesne. He only has for the day 10 carries for net 23 positive yards, no touchdowns. On the flip side, I thought Darius Parantes was not afraid to throw the ball deep. He was intercepted twice. The one that Beanie Bishop brought in for the day, I gotta say, was very impressive. I mean, not seeing it all where the ball was, going up to defend the receiver, putting his arms out, bringing it all in. That was really impressive by Beanie Bishop, making up for those 2 near picks that he had a week ago against Penn State, coming away with one, and then just Parantes just completely overthrowing a receiver late in the contest that Avery Wilcox is able to come in and get West Virginia's second turnover of the day. Although Parantes was not afraid to throw the deep ball, completed 14 balls for 220 yards on the day. And like I said, went after Andrew Wilson-Lamp. So I was impressed with the defensive, the rush defense on the day. I'm wary of the pass defense. I'd love to know how you feel about this pass defense after seeing it for 2 weeks. And that's what I like. But ultimately, let me hold up here. Let me just pause in and say it like this. The Big 12, it was a very weird week for the Big 12. Yes, Texas looks as if, after beating Alabama on the road, looks like a team that could potentially waltz through this conference to on en route to a Big 12 title game matchup. And the only other team that I think comes even close after seeing the rest of this conference is Kansas State, winning both of its games. Handedly controlled Troy for a 42-13 victory yesterday. Oklahoma struggled with SMU, didn't finally pull away until the fourth quarter, and it was a 10-point game. I kind of agreed with this call. I didn't necessarily agree with this call. SMU went for it with its timeouts. I think 7 minutes left in the game, down 10. So you need 2 scores. And you're either going to punt here or you're going to try and go for it, come up with so again, you got to get 2 scores some way in 7 minutes with your timeouts though. SMU goes for it, throws a little out route, puts in about almost max protection, throws an out route to one of its receivers, and the Oklahoma cornerback kind of like jumps in there and bats the ball away. So again, Oklahoma at home against SMU barely pulled off a victory. So Iowa State taking a defeat, Texas Tech giving up 20 fourth quarter points to Oregon to lose that game, at home against the Ducks, 38-30. That was a heartbreaker. Baylor just giving the game away to Utah at home. Sawyer Robinson. I wonder, I didn't really follow up on this game to understand why Blake Shapen left the contest, but Sawyer Robertson completing the game for Baylor, throws almost like if you can remember the Virginia Tech game in 2021, in which Deggy almost threw a costly interception to cost West Virginia the game in 2021. That's what happened to Baylor, but Utah actually converted on it and came away with a victory. So this incredibly difficult schedule, top 5 in the country coming into the season, on paper at least, now looks a whole lot different than it was just even 2 weeks ago. So that's the beauty. That's the beauty of college football, and that's the beauty of the Big 12, is you never know. So you don't know whether this was just a single solitary I don't know how to say, case in point example for West Virginia, and because they were either looking ahead to Pitt, or like I said, getting an entire group of 17 to 24-year-olds to put their minds, together and work as a tandem and a team for a common goal for 3 hours once a week, or even in practice. Sometimes, I don't think we give these coaches enough credit for the work that they do in and out each and every week. So you can see some teams performed well, some teams against moderate competition, even some FCS opponents, or, UCF going all the way out to Boise State. And after they had crushed Kent State the week before at home, they only win by 2 late in the game. Field goal that expires as time expires. UCF comes away with a victory against the Broncos. And then what about the Dana Holgorsen-led Houston Cougars losing to Rice in a game in which JT Daniels was up in, I think, over 200 yards or near over 200 yards passing in the first quarter, and that Rice ends up coming away with a double overtime victory. So this conference is wacky. The opponents are wacky. So I don't even know how to judge this conference just yet. But I will just say that I'm very concerned about and I was going into the season, I was concerned about West Virginia's wide receiving core, and that's ultimately why I can't see this team winning a Big 12 championship, or even contending to be one of the power players in this conference, is because there isn't, at least right now, a guy who I think would start on the 2018 team. That was just how much better the talent was at that point in time. And the other thing in the secondary, and I think it parlays into this common thread that we don't understand as fans, because we're not seeing these depth charts coming out prior to Penn State, prior to this game, is we don't know where this injury situation, lays with this team. That, like I said at the beginning of this video, Marcus Floyd have not seen. Devin Carter doesn't play in this contest for some reason. Jacoby Spells just plays on special teams and not overtaking Andrew Wilson-Lamp, who really struggled at the cornerback position. Thank goodness that this team has an intact offensive line, and I was really impressed. And that was one of my things that I was watching for in the preview video, was how was the second string offensive line going to play. I'm really impressed. I got to give a lot of kudos to Brandon Yates for coming in there. I saw him out there. I was really hard on Brandon Yates in 2021, especially the bowl game performance against Minnesota. But I saw him out there at right guard, sliding over to center. There were a lot of different interchangeable parts. If you didn't tune in really after the break or went into watching into the second quarter, seeing that this game was kind of put away and either turned to Texas and Alabama, or just called it a night for that matter. West Virginia in the second half with its offensive linemen, there were a lot of different interchangeable parts, and I was really impressed with the push that they got into the second half. There were times before the break and even coming out of the break, I was a little bit like there were at times I think CJ Donaldson had to work for his yards a lot harder than really was necessary. 13 carries on the day for 56 yards for Donaldson without a touchdown. It really just seemed like he was taking what the defense for Duquesne was giving him on the day. It's like, okay, looking for a hole, not finding it, stepping out for 9 yards. So you'll take it at the end of the day, but there wasn't anything opening up that boom, Donaldson could take and hit for solid chunks. Now, conversely, at the running back position, I'm really impressed with Jaheim White. I know he had the touchdown run in the spring game, and also I know that this is a stable of backs that are all competing internally with each other for opportunity. So Jalen Anderson coming away with a touchdown this game, and you still have your horse, who I said after watching the Penn State victory, in Donaldson, who I think is going to get upwards of 240 carries for the season. So there's not really, it's like a team with too many good starting pitchers that you can't get the young stud, the young prospect to come out there and get him out on the mound. That's how I'm feeling about Jaheim White. But when he does get out there, he's giving it his all, and he's a home run threat in the receiving and in the rushing department. But I mean, was patient, had a touchdown in this game. I was really happy to see that for him. 12 carries, 110 yards, and a touchdown, including a 39-yarder. So averaging 9.2 yards per carry. So impressed for Jaheim White. But that's also at the running back position. I said, where is this team with injuries, and how injured is West Virginia already after 2 weeks, not seeing Justin Johnson out there? So I'm wondering how many players were, rested, load management, to use an NBA term right there. Devin Carter being the most notable one. I was seeing things on Twitter saying that he was suiting up after the break to come in there at the receiver position. But thankfully it was Clement who had those burns for touchdowns that then it was like, okay, just take your helmet off, Devin Carter. We don't need you in this one. So, but then CJ Donaldson's used into the third quarter when the game's really put away. I was so thankful and so, let out a deep breath of fresh air when Donaldson wasn't hurt on that pass block, when his left leg he almost did a split out there. You thought, I don't know, maybe he pulled a groin or something like that. I'm so thankful that it wasn't anything serious. Also, I'm very concerned about now Ollie Straw. I know it was just an awkward thing, but it's like, man, he's really, did you see he almost had like a 70-yard punt early on in the game, pinning Duquesne deep after he played really well against Penn State a week ago. So he punts the ball, the Duquesne defender runs into the end of his right foot and it turns awkwardly. I don't know if it was a knee injury. I don't know if it was an ankle injury. I don't know if it was a foot injury in some way, shape, or form, but he's out there on the sidelines wearing a boot after that contest. So we've seen in years in games in which West Virginia has pretty similar talent to some of its foes, that it's just the very little things that can be the determining factors in the game. And field position is as important as anything to Neil Brown in the game. So if you have a punter like Ollie Straw who can pin teams back deep in their own, deep on their side of the field, you need those kinds of guys. So who's going to step up if Ollie Straw can't go next week against Pitt? And then for the, we got to monitor all of these injuries. So I would love you could have a lie detector test or truth serum on Neil Brown to just see what's happening with some of these guys, because it's just shrouded in dark in clouds right now of how injured this team is, who's healthy, and why are some of these guys that you thought would take on more leadership roles with playing time attached to it, what's going on with them? I'm looking namely in the receiving core and defensive backs, but so far I'm okay with what I'm seeing at weak side at linebacker with Trey Lathan. I know that was a concern coming into the season. I think he's put all of those worries to bed for this moment, just because of how fast he is. His closing speed when he went after the quarterback for a sack or a QB hit early on, even before the break. I'm really impressed with how fast Trey Lathan is. Whenever West Virginia has to go up against some of those meaty offensive lines, I'm thinking like an Oklahoma out there. I'm thinking of an Oklahoma State. I want to see how he takes on some of those offensive linemen if they try and go power on him. But so far, Trey Lathan, Lee Koba being a really, really fierce, ferocious linebacking core. And Mike Lockhart, Sean Martin, who I thought could have gotten one of those load management moments for this game, really given their effort in this contest. And then, like I said, the secondary is still just shrouded in, we got to see what happens from this week to this week, from week in to week out. So, I think that's just about all that needs to be said about this game. If you had to try and grade it, I would see it somewhere in the ballpark, maybe of like a C plus, B minus range. I think there were some really good things, and like I said, to cover, to beat Vegas. And at the end of the day, that's all. I think a lot of that's all these players care about is whether they win. I don't think necessarily, the media's narrative or fans, how the way fans like me think about the game. They look at it as they won at the end of the day, and they finished with a victory. So what else more do you really want from us? Are you only going to satisfy if West Virginia wins by 50 or wins by 60 or absolutely plays perfect in every single phase? And that's just unaccomplishable for this program, or for a lot of other college football teams, as I pointed out in this video. It was all over the map, good and bad, in week 2 against FCS opponents, against FBS opponents, and again, the schedule looks a whole lot easier, at least on paper, than it did just 2 weeks ago. So I'm still in a wait and see kind of mode, and the opponent in which West Virginia is going to take on next, its most hated, fiercest rival, the Pittsburgh Panthers, who West Virginia owes after the way that the backyard brawl went in Pittsburgh last year and finished. They're coming off an L. So they took one hard last night against the Cincinnati Bearcats, who are now 2-0 on the season. The team who's brand new to this Big 12 conference. And for guys like me who thought Cincinnati was going to have arguably as bad a season, right up there with Houston of any teams in the Big 12 this year, they go on the road, they go to Acrisure Stadium, and they beat the Pitt Panthers, unlike West Virginia could do one season ago. So there will still be another unfortunate thing is that ESPN College Game Day is not coming to Morgantown, instead going to Colorado. I don't know why, with also big noon kickoff from Fox Sports. It's just the Dion, Coach Prime, Sanders effect in full force here, that he is the hottest show in town in all of college football this year, and that both big noon kickoff and ESPN College Game Day have to go all the way out to Boulder to cover them versus Colorado State. So because, unfortunately, West Virginia is not interesting and not fun right now, Pitt's now coming off a loss. I know the game was already announced before Pitt lost, but that this is just another game across college football that does not warrant an ESPN College Game Day type of takeover in Morgantown next week. So that's a little bit sad, but the game sold out. Fans are going to be in the parking lots already from the beginning of the morning all the way until the late evening and through into midnight. So I will break that all down this upcoming Thursday. You will not want to miss that. So I want to know how you're feeling after this Duquesne victory. Once again, a 56-17 point victory for the Mountaineers over the Dukes in Morgantown in a game that will forever be remembered from a 2-hour thunderstorm that took this game into the late evening hours, and Hudson Clement's historic performance with 177 yards and 3 touchdowns, joining Stedman Bailey and Tavon Austin. So, yeah, let me know how you're feeling, everyone out there. Everybody have a great week. And hail West Virginia. We'll talk on Thursday. See you later.